a lot of people are asking what would happen in the George Zimmerman case if the racial roles were reversed. And I think that's a fair question to ask. And thankfully, we actually have a few cases that we can point to show the difference between the Zimmerman case and these particular cases. Now, one story that we talked about many times on the show, it involved a woman by the name of Marissa Alexander, who was sentenced to 20 years in prison because she shot a warning shot to get her abusive husband to get away from her. I should note that she had a restraining order against her husband. They were estranged. She went back to the house that they lived in so she can get some stuff that she left over there. And she thought her husband wasn't there, but unfortunately he was. He got violent. She went back into her car to get a gun, which I think that's the reason why she got convicted, to keep it real. And then she went back and shot the warning shot. And she was convicted, and she had no prior record, no criminal record whatsoever. She had a master's degree, she had children, but it didn't matter. She was convicted and was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
So, a couple of things about this. Now, look, if you look at it just the Marissa Alexander story, you might say, hey, you know what? You probably, if you had gone back to the car, just get in the car and go, right?
Exactly.
Avoid the confrontation, and that's would have been my perception of it, right? But she doesn't shoot to kill. Now they would make the case, and I think they did, saying, well, you don't know. It could have ricocheted and hit the guy, or maybe even the kids, and we don't know. Maybe she was a terrible shot, and that's why it went near the ceiling, etc. Right? So I get it. Every case judged on its own merits. You might say, well, what can you do? And it was a mandatory minimum because she did it in the commission of a felony. But by the way, why is her firing the shot in the commission of a felony and Zimmerman firing the shot is not in the commission of a felony? They both fired a shot. In fact, Zimmerman killed a guy and Marissa Alexander didn't, right? So, but when Mark O'Mara says, as he did in the press conference after the trial, well, if Zimmerman was black, we wouldn't even have had this case. No, as you see with Marissa Alexander and the other case we're about to show you, if they were black, you would have had the trial and they would have been convicted.
Absolutely. So another example is the case of John McNeil. And John McNeil got a call from his son indicating that there was a suspicious person in their backyard, okay? So John McNeil showed up to the home and noticed that it was a former contractor that they had hired, and someone by the name of Brian Epp. He was a 19-year-old. And Brian Epp had numerous disagreements with John McNeil, and they exchanged words, but Epp was getting very, very violent with him. So he refused to leave the property. He would not go away. And then at some point, Epp decided to charge at McNeil, and McNeil shot him. And
Epp, by the way, this is very important, had a box cutter.
Yeah.
So now, remember 9/11 happened with box cutters. And remember, Trayvon didn't have a weapon. Now, again, if you break down the case there, I don't know all the details. I wasn't on the jury, et cetera. You might say, hey, maybe the box cutter wasn't enough of a threat. Maybe he shouldn't have done that with deadly force, etc. But here, yet again, now there's a black businessman. The other lady worked for a software company, was no record, master's degree, doesn't matter, 20 years, right? This guy, now if it's a black guy, he would have. So they didn't even try him, right? Because he's black. Because Mark O'Mara told me that black people get off easy. They don't even bring the case, right?
This story is so devastating because, of course, they tried him. Of course, they convicted him. He served 6 years in prison, and then later on, his sentence was not dropped, but it went from a murder conviction to a manslaughter conviction. So he was able to get out after 6 years. But while he was in prison, his wife died of cancer. Okay, his wife died of cancer 10 days before he got out of prison. Oh. So 2 days after he got out, he had to bury his wife, and also his mother died while he was in prison, and he was unable to attend the funeral.
Now, they reduced the sentence. Why? Because they came to the conclusion, oops, this is manslaughter. This is not, he didn't intend to kill the kid. They were in a confrontation. And by the way, I thought Zimmerman should have been convicted of manslaughter, not intent to kill. Now, you can disagree with that, but when you cause a death recklessly, etc., because of the situation, not to get too heavy into the weeds, it's manslaughter. So this guy initially got convicted of murder, the highest charge. But black people get off easy. Oh, the American justice system loves black people. When they come in, like Zimmerman, they let him walk around without handcuffs all over the police thing, and then they don't even interrogate him. They don't even do criminal background checks. They just escort him out of the building and say, that's okay, you're free to go. Except for all the cases where they did the exact opposite, and those guys all went to jail. Okay, not convinced yet? We got another black businessman for you. Same situation.
Yes, his name is John White, and back in 2006, this 54-year-old man found out from his from his son that there was a group of white teenagers that showed up to the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these teenagers had an issue with his son, and they were there for violence. They were there to get into a physical altercation with the son. Now, one of the 17-year-old boys that showed up to the home was someone by the name of Daniel Sicchiaro, and apparently he would not leave. They would not leave the property, and as a result, John White did shoot and kill the 17-year-old. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
he got off, right? Because he's a black guy. So if a black guy kills a young white kid, we were told by the Zimmerman fans that, well, he walks right away, right? I mean, so he walked, right?
Yeah. No, he served 5 months in jail before his sentence was commuted by the New York governor at the time, David Patterson. So
now the guy, the 54-year-old businessman, he described the scene as a lynch mob. Okay.
Yeah. So there are a group of teenagers. By the way, I missed one important part. The 17-year-old lunged for the gun.
Right.
Okay, and then what happened was White's gun accidentally discharged.
Now, look, you break down the case. You said maybe it didn't accidentally discharge, but there's all those witnesses there. It's the guy is not alone. It's not like Trayvon's case, and so everybody, the witnesses, etc., say, well, the guy did lunge for the gun, right? Guilty, right? And then you have to have the governor come in and commute a sentence later.
Yeah.
So. Gee, I wonder if the justice system in America is rigged in favor of blacks. Come on, who can really? I mean, again, I'm always like, do you really believe that? When a right-winger says that, is he so stupid that he actually believes it? Like, oh, in this country, black people, they've had nothing but big breaks. Remember when we captured them and brought them here as slaves and made them work for free and whipped them and raped them, etc. And then remember the civil rights era where we just robbed them of all of their rights and made them drink from colored water fountains. If they stepped in the pool, we'd empty the pool because they were so dirty, and all this stuff, and we didn't give them voting rights. And now the justice system. Remember today, even though blacks and whites have the same exact rate of drug consumption, blacks are arrested at 4 times the rate. In some cities and states, 8 times the rate. Remember all those breaks that African Americans caught in this country and catch in this country? To this day, these 3 cases that we show you, you can't possibly believe that blacks are favored by this system.
Okay, so let me jump in, because what we just gave you is obviously anecdotal evidence, right? However, there has been a study done by the Urban Institute's Justice Policy Center, and it shows the number of justifiable homicides using stand your ground as a defense. And this is based on FBI data between 2005 and 2009, the most recent data available. And what they found was the following. Let's look at the graph. The graph is amazing. What they found was that whites who kill blacks in stand your ground states are far more likely to be found justified in their killings. In non-stand your ground states, whites are 250% more likely to be found justified in killing a black person than a white person who kills another white person. In stand your ground states, that number jumps to 354%.
No, that can't be true, because I know the justice system in America and overall the government in America loves black people. They can't wait to give black people a break. The Zimmerman case was the one exception. Well, it wasn't really an exception. It just goes to show you that Zimmerman must have really been innocent